They warned about the slaughter of the 20th century. Leo XIII, at the end of the 19th century, had a vision in which God said to him that the 20th century would be the devil's own century. Pius X decried nationalism, or Pius XI rather, decried nationalism and socialism. Pius XII, despite what you might have heard, he wrote an encyclical in German, mit brennenden Sorge, decrying Nazism, and he was the lone voice at that time in Europe criticizing Hitler and taking him seriously. Everybody thought Adolf Hitler was just a 9 days wonder. They didn't realize the suffering it would bring on the world. Pius XII did, as did Benedict XV. These things are amazing, that God speaks through His church. And you know what our attitude is? Well, what do the popes know? Paul VI, in his encyclical Humanae Vitae, which we don't like to talk about, because it's none of my gosh darn business. I'm watching myself, I'm in the pulpit. It's none of my gosh darn business. Humanae Vitae, which talked about the dangers and evils of artificial birth control, he said that it would bring about a degradation of women, a degradation of sexuality, and a proliferation of divorce. Well, golly, 40 years after? But what do the popes have to say? They don't know anything. We could go on and on and on. God has spoken to His people. Now the reading, in the first reading from Micah, in their affliction, people will say, let us know, let us strive to know the Lord in their affliction. You see, God speaks to you in times of peace. And because we do not listen, He allows affliction, that we might hear Him in the time of affliction. But God gives an opportunity to you to hear Him in peace before you are forced to hear Him in affliction. You know, they talk about the 10 deadly plagues of Egypt. There were only 9 deadly plagues, or only 1 deadly plague. 9 were shots across the bow. God warns us, and in His mercy He warns us, and He warns us, and we ignore Him. In the gospel, Jesus passed on, and He saw a man named Matthew sitting at the customs post. He was a tax collector, and he said, follow me. For this Jesus was criticized. And He said, the well do not need a doctor, but the sick do. What was Matthew's sin? He was a tax collector. Well, I know that you might get mad at tax collectors, but the ones that we deal with now are nothing like the ones we dealt with then. Because you see, in the Roman system, they would auction off a tax post, and if you collected more tax money, you got to keep it. And so a tax collector might say to some poor widow, well, you've got 10 kids, why don't you sell 2 of them as slaves? That way you can pay your tax assessment. They sold their their countrymen into slavery. They were hated. They were excommunicated from the synagogue. But think about Matthew. Matthew was a Jew, and he was asked to believe in this great invisible reality. And he gave up on the power of God and the reality of his faith. And he gave himself to something that he could touch and see and feel and hear. The clink of coin. There is nothing more real than money. There is nothing more real than money. You can hold it in your hand, and if you have enough of it, people are impressed. They greet you warmly. Money is real. I've heard God called an invisible friend or an imaginary friend for grown-ups. Remember Abraham, who went out and he was told by God, count the stars if you can, but there are no stars. Yes, there are stars. And the invisible world that we are asked to live in, not simply to believe exists, but we are asked as Catholic Christians to live in an unseen world. It is more real because all that you have, all that you see, is being swept away. And the world that is invisible, the world that the established order does not believe exists, it remains forever. The love of God and the truth of the gospel remains forever. The grass withers, the flesh fades, but the word of the Lord endures forever. When we lay hold of things that we think are real, what we possess, whom we control, our money, our well-being, our fashions, these things are real. I can touch them. They are real only temporarily. The love of God is eternal and unchanging. And if you lay hold of it, you will have something that no one and nothing can take from you. This is a world, as Sister Mariana said, in which it is very difficult to be a believer. But the truth of the unseen world is no less true for it being difficult. I'm almost done. You've been very patient. Thank God I had a cold or I'd be going on till 1 o'clock. There is a saying that he is a fool who does not give away what he cannot keep in order to possess what he cannot lose. He is a fool who does not give away what he cannot keep in order to possess what he cannot lose. All that you think you possess, all that seems so real, you will lose. If not by the circumstances of life, by the inevitability of death. The relationships, the possessions, the pleasures, the vices, you will lose them all. You cannot keep them. But the love of God, which is gained by taking our eyes off those things that seem so real, cannot be taken from you by anyone. He is a fool who will not give away what he cannot keep in order to gain what he cannot lose. It seems so invisible, the reality of God. God seems so distant. We're being asked to believe in a world that, unless we're great mystics, we cannot see. Though we can sense it in our heart, we cannot touch it with our hands. I think of the story of a little boy who was sent to a Bible camp in summer by his parents. They thought a little religion would be a good thing. Just a little. Don't want to make anybody into a fanatic. And they were not believers, but the camp was good for him, they thought. And he came home and he asked his mother, "Mama, if God is real, why can't I see him?" And she was fixing dinner or something. He said, "I'm busy. Go ask your father." And there sat Papa in the front room with the channel changer. He said, "Papa, if God is real, why can't I see him?" And Papa said, "I'm busy. Go ask your mother." Well, he was out fishing one morning, one beautiful morning. His grandpa took him up to Wisconsin, to the pine forest, the lakes, and it was a beautiful morning with the sun just beginning to rise and the fog coming off the lake, that sweet smell of the pine forest. The water was like glass, and this little boy sat in the boat with his fishing pole and his grandfather, and he said, "Grandpa, if God is so real, why can't I see him?" And the grandfather was very quiet. And then he looked at his grandson and he said, "You know, as the time goes on and I get older, God is just about all I can see." God is all in all. And if we allow the Holy Spirit to open the eyes of our heart, we hear him speaking and we see him moving. Wonderful old song, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face. The things of this earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace." In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.